I think that's the cue that we're live. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Learning and Performance Management Driving Career Mobility panel. We have a wonderful panel here. To set things up, first of all, I think all of us recognize that the workplace is becoming the next educational system, and corporate learning really needs to augment traditional learning systems such as public education, private universities, et cetera. And the question we're trying to focus on today is how can CEOs, chief people officers, and chief learning officers work together to ensure that there's synergies in between learning, performance management, and ultimately career management, and they all converge in the workplace. And we've got a great panel. I'd like to introduce our panelists, and then we'll get started. So first of all, a director of Udemy is here, Heather Hiles. Heather Hiles, prior to becoming a director at Udemy, was the CEO and chancellor of Calbright, and she was the sole founder of Pathbright. It's really great to have you, Heather. Thank you for joining us. Anita Graham, who is the Chief People Officer at Pluralsight, is joined us as well. Anita, if you don't know very much about Pluralsight, I hear it mentioned all the time around workforce development and technology skills. It's becoming one of the platforms that corporations are really looking to in inculcating technology skills in their workforce. We're also very lucky to have Kat Kennedy, who is the Chief Experience Officer at Degreed. Kat actually was one of the founding members of Degreed. So welcome, Kat. Brent Alvord is here as well. He is the CEO of Mighty Labs. And Mighty Labs, if you don't know about Mighty Labs is actually focused on helping remote companies and cross-functional teams stay aligned, focused, and thriving in this new world. And I would imagine that their mission and their work has changed quite a bit, or maybe been enhanced quite a bit since the start of our COVID epidemic. Finally, we have Lou Tedrick, who is the Chief Learning Officer at Verizon. I started looking for some information about Verizon's learning department. Maybe you don't know this, but Verizon has 12 consecutive years as being one of the training top 125 organizations, including a 2-year stint at number 1 in 2012 and 2013. And there's actually, Lou has this long list of accomplishments. So welcome, Lou. We're great to have you all here. We're going to start by talking about what I think is really one of the things that most people are thinking about today, which is how do learning, performance, and career mobility look like in a post or a current COVID world? And so maybe what I'll do is I'll throw that out. Heather, if you could take a crack at that, and anyone else, commenting on Heather's on what Heather has to say. But it would be great to hear you first, Heather.
Happy to, and thank you for having me here. I think it's safe to say that the one thing we can count on right now is that everything is changing in the world of work, and that we're all being forced to become lifelong learners. As business leaders and individuals alike are grappling with staggering impact of COVID, we're seeing rapid layers and layers of layoffs. Unfortunately, unemployment rates are increasing, and even this past summer, 25% of college summer internships were canceled. So a ton of people have been needing to stay very, very agile. And even for folks who feel like they have some level of stability within their current employment, we're finding that a lot of folks understand that in this more gig economy, that people need to be retrained with new skills in order to be retained and keep their jobs. And we were already headed towards a gig-based economy. Traditional learning was built for a world we just don't live in anymore. And I think COVID has brought that reality to light. It used to be you could focus on one discipline and then one job. My mother literally had one job working with the IRS for 35 years. And I like to tease and say I've had about 35 jobs in my life. But it's more of a mindset that I'm constantly learning new skills. And whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're trying to get a promotion at your job, and so you need to, at your employer's employment site, so you need to learn new skills to get that opportunity, or whether you're trying to get hired into a new economy job, you've got to learn new skills. And I think about what we've seen at Udemy since the COVID pandemic is that people need and are hungry for access to the right skill and the right information at the right time for their needs. We're also seeing a lot of companies helping people become solopreneurs to get the skills to create their own jobs, their own livelihoods. So there is a lot of stuff going on here. I think what we've got to do is make sure that people have access and learn the mindsets of becoming lifelong learners, and that we as employers have, I think, almost an obligation to our employees to make sure that they have access to the right content and the support to learn new kinds of skills so that they can stay relevant and productive at the companies where they work. Creating a learning culture is the best way to elevate growth and learning throughout your entire organization. So it's a win-win for everybody. I've met a lot of wonderful employers who know that they need to help retrain people so that they can maintain their jobs. And I think that reality has become all the more important and is really weighing heavily on the minds of employers today.
Awesome. So world has changed. Learners need to change. Companies need to change. What else are you guys seeing out there around, how the world has changed since, and maybe COVID is a false starting point. It probably started long before that. But, how is COVID changing the way we think about learning, performance management, career mobility? Anyone?
Jump in here, John, or
anyone can jump in.
Well, I just fully support Heather and how she's describing the current environment. I think what we're seeing here is education is one of the last dinosaurs headed for disruption. Similar to Blockbuster, traditional education is going to be going away, and our companies are going to hold the responsibility on our shoulders of how we continue perpetuating lifelong learning. So I see the world much like Heather does.
Awesome.
I think that's an important point too, John. I think you said it right, and Anita built off of it. Like COVID, I think was an accelerant, but it started long before, where the way organizations work has changed dramatically. If you scope time back a little bit, right? Like, we're not handing things down assembly lines in a knowledge workforce anymore. And so when 84% of US knowledge workers are matrixed in some way, like teams, organizations are super dynamic and super fluid. And when, working on more than one team at a time, often reporting to more than one manager, like, how do you maintain like a consistent kind of learning curve when you're kind of bouncing through experiences or bouncing through managers? The challenge has been there for a long time, and a lot of the folks on this panel are responding to it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, Anita, maybe I can get a little more specific with you around these three different topics that we talked about. We talked about learning, performance management, and career management. These all sound like separate things. How do we bring these together, and what are the tools and techniques that practitioners can use to pull these together to feel cohesive in some way?
Well, we're lucky. We've got one of the best practitioners sitting right here with us in Lou and her work at Verizon. She's been a tremendous bright light in how you pull together learning, performance, and career mobility. And I like to think of these things as three legs of a stool. Absent one of them, you cannot sit on it. And a lot of our shared organizations that we all work with try to tackle one. And in a world like we're in today, you can't understand what people need to learn without understanding where they are in their journey, their performance to their learning outcomes. And then the number one reason outside of leadership that people leave is career mobility. People leave for bigger jobs, bigger opportunities. And I think in all the companies we collectively serve, we want to perpetuate talent to stay and grow at the companies that they're at. So if you don't tackle all three, you run into trouble. And whether it's Udemy, Degreed, or Pluralsight, we provide the gate between career mobility and performance, the ability to link those two, and learning exists as a culture inside our organization. And same, with Brent's organization, we kind of all circle around these three key things, and we watch it show up in the great work that Lou's doing at Verizon.
Awesome. What do people have to add to that?
I think sorry, Heather, you go.
No, good.
Yeah, I think they are interwoven, as we think about the way businesses have grown. And again, Verizon is an exceptional example of how to do it right. The other is that we see the struggle. They have those partitioned off and not working together. And that ignores how individuals actually behave. They're learning so that they can grow in their career in a lot of cases, especially when that learning is happening inside of the enterprise. It's either to be better at the role that I'm in or to become qualified for my next opportunity. And so if you think from the perspective of the human, we take off our technology hat, we put on our person hat, those are intertwined and working together. So let's make sure that we're creating systems and processes that empower the individual in that type of interaction.
Awesome. Maybe we can get a little more specific on that. What's one practice that you can say that really does a good job of linking these things together? Like, just think about a chief learning officer somewhere, maybe sitting across a Zoom bridge from you right now. What is the one practice that can bring together learning, career mobility, and performance? Is there an automatic change in title when you finish a particular learning program? Is that the type of career mobility we're looking for? Are we saying workers, finish this training program and we'll add another $1 to your hourly pay? What are those kind of practices that can link everything together?
Well, I would offer that as we think about reskilling, we need to focus on kind of what's the end outcome. So if you're working with folks and building skills, you want to be able to point to the type of role that this is going to potentially lead you to. So, and if I think about recently some reskilling that we did internally, we needed to for our business just reskill some of our team members who were working in retail to do call center, chat, phone roles, customer service roles, just because of supply and demand of our resources. And we were very specific about what role we needed you to take on. Here's the skills that we're going to develop. And the curriculum was very tied to that. And the employees got immediately engaged because they knew if I did these things, this is the role, this is what I would be doing. And sometimes I think we overcomplicate our reskilling and upskilling initiatives. It's very nebulous rather than these are the skills, this is how we're going to equip you to get those skills, and then these are the roles that will prepare you for. I think people want to see that line of sight to link everything together.
Great, line of sight. What did other people have to add to that?
I would say that there's a combination between the technology that affords us the opportunity to share with people just in time what are the competencies or skills that are desired that are related to a particular job or project that needs to get done, and making that pathway and access the information super visible so people can understand, I may be doing this right now, but for example, if I want to build more ability to take my engineering and apply it to social media outcomes, for example, or user traction or whatever it is, that there's enough agility but information to understand the pathways where new skills can be applied to new work that's at that company. But I think that should be coupled with internally within companies, some kind of coaching and support system for people. Because a lot of folks, even when they've come into businesses and been very successful in one job, don't necessarily have the visual and the understanding of all the new things that have happened. And any given company that has survived in the last 10 to 20 years, so much new software has changed how they do work. And for people who used to do jobs that didn't require an interpretation of machine learning outputs, now they have to be able to interpret that kind of information and know what it means and know how that impacts their customer or their work product. And so I think being able to give people and update them, catch them up with all the advances that leadership have brought to the company is difficult. And there's a lot of great technology to do a lot of that. But I find also that internal to a company, having good mentorship programs and people who can be kind of success coaches and tell you about the changes and support you to be that lifelong learner is very important as well.
Awesome. So let me sum up before we get to the next stage. I think the three things that I heard that are really key practices, clearly defined learning outcomes in terms of competencies, skills, putting a label on that is important. A line of sight in between those competencies and skills to specific career opportunities, and then the coaching and scaffolding around the individual to help them make the transition. Lou, let me come back to you. What are the kind of challenges that organizations are facing as they try to package that all together and make a cohesive program that moves people from, in your case, from retail positions to call center positions?
Yeah, I'll talk about three different things. I think number one, our employees expect a commercial grade experience. That I want this easy experience, something easy to use that connects me, if I'm thinking about my career, with the type of roles that are possible for me. And then, as Heather mentioned, lays out a clear plan of learning, assignments, projects that I need to complete or get experience with, and then that will lead me to that next step. And so, so that puts pressure on us as HR practitioners to really understand our workforce plan, the needs that we have, what our acquisition plans will be, what our development needs will be. You need a platform, but you also need to tie that to your workforce planning process. So I think that is another thing that if you've not really been thinking 3-5 years ahead on the skill sets that you're going to need, the roles that you're going to need, this is part of building that career mobility. And then I also think that leaders, if we think about the gig economy, leaders are very open to people doing developmental assignments, and that really, for me, gets me excited because that gives us the real 70 of the 70-20-10. But they're not very good at describing those gig opportunities from they can tell you what they want, the work they want to be done, but they're not really great at describing the skills that are necessary, the kind of experience you would gain from this. So again, I think it's us providing platforms, it's us having strategic workforce plans that support these platforms, and then us having leaders who really know how to describe the work that needs to be done, the skill set required, and what kind of experience someone can leave with, because then that just builds folks' careers. So it's all of us working together that's going to make this happen. And what's exciting is that we finally, I think, have the technology that we've wanted for years. I think it's here now, and we can really take advantage of it.
Awesome, thank you. Kat, you're nodding. So tell me what about that sort of resonated with you?
I am lucky enough to get to work very closely with Lou, and just everything that she's speaking to is real in the way that they approach it at Verizon. And they set a shining example of what to do because they do it so right. They're very intentional. They always put the individual at the center. They focus on how that individual can interact with the entirety of the business to then move that business forward. And, historically, technology wasn't the best enabler of that. Companies that were very intentional and worked very hard could do it with a lot of work. Now we're saying that they can do it, and technology can empower them to do it fast enough as the world is evolving, right? Like if we think about how quickly the world is changing, if we didn't have the technology that we do, I wouldn't be as optimistic as I am today. But now we are in this moment where technology can keep up and even be ahead. It's up to us as individuals to make sure we've got the right mindset to empower the organizations that we're inside and the people that we interact with every day.
Awesome. So I think the idea, so experienced platform leaders, those all have to come together, but that's probably not enough. Companies really need to create allies both internally and externally. Maybe Brent, have you what thoughts do you have about what the most important alliances are, and how, like, if you're going to succeed the way Lou has at Verizon, what are the kind of alliances you think that leaders should be making?
Yeah, I mean, I think the word alliance is a really important one. Obviously, I think a lot about alignment. It's how we think, it's kind of the lens through which we view the world. And I think for a long time, I guess I feel like the perspective of the word alignment for organizations has always been one purely of business alignment. Like, is the right work happening to drive the key objectives of an organization? And I think the new world and the future really requires a deeper definition of that word, that alignment is actually a tying together of interests and directing those to business outcomes, but in a way that also contemplates that, even that down to the individual contributor level, whether it's a learning goal, work goal, promotion goal, that they all are sort of contemplated in that concept of alignment. And I think we need to kind of reframe how we think about alignment and performance.
Boy, that's
And
such a, I'm just saying, that's such a powerful notion that, like, typically you're right. We talk about alignment of tasks of work, but we oftentimes we're afraid in big companies to say, there can be mismatches in terms of interests, and the way companies silo work. There's a purpose behind it sometimes. So I'm sorry, keep on going.
Yeah, no, there certainly is. I mean, there are value creation inside of an organization. There are vectors of value creation that are really important to keep intact, right? Like, we have groups and teams and departments, but those are a lot of times those are reporting structures for understanding how value is created. But when it comes down to how people form around value creation, I think there are different models that have evolved. And so when you talk about alliances, like, I think Kat used a really important word earlier, and that's this concept of partitioning. Like, it can't, in a lot of ways, our managers' jobs are partitioned. Their systems are partitioned. They do work in this tool called project management, and they do one-on-ones in this tool called, X. And just the fact alone that those are separate, it kind of speaks to how a manager, their time is separated in that way too. And I think that is probably one of the most important alliances that needs to be created inside of an organization is new, 20 to 30% of managers and 1,000-person and on companies are new managers. And so, like, they are that frontline mentor and really empowering them to understand how their direct reports or their teams or all these different individuals that they oversee, how they're learning in the flow of work, and how, making sure that individual understands how what they're doing every day is contributing, not just to the organization, but to their own career. And so I think there's just some really deep thinking that needs to happen there.
When it comes to career mobility, when it comes to performance, when it comes to learning, what are the examples of situations in which, interests can differ and you need to actually work on aligning interest? Lou, have you faced any of that at Verizon?
I think we have. We have looked at what are the skills and capabilities we need for the future, and really try to ensure our employees understand that, so that they too can think about where do my interests align with where we're headed. And quite frankly, there are times where people may say, this isn't really where I want to go. So I think we all need to be aware of that. There may be good talent that says this isn't what the direction that I want to go, and we need to be okay if they need to look at elsewhere. But I think the more transparent we are and earlier that we can communicate to our employees where we're headed, why we're headed, how do we help you prepare to get there, it gives them the options to put themselves on a path, either to stay with the company or make some intentional choices if they choose that it's not the right place for me, I need to go elsewhere.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to get some. I think we're going to starting to get questions in right now. If you're out there and you're listening, start putting your questions in. We'll ask them. This is a great panel. We're going to have still lots more to talk about. So we've talked about when you're actually trying to bring these things together, there needs to be this experience. You need to have the right technology. You need to have leaders who are informed. You need to align not only people's understanding and people's work, but you need to align their interests. Maybe Kat, let me turn to you. What are 2 to 3 things that leaders need to be doing to bring all of this together so that there's this cohesive learning, career management, performance, that it all works together in the most synergistic way possible?
Yeah, across all of those bullets that you cited, at the center of it is a person. It is the individuals that ultimately we get to serve in our jobs, with our technology. So the best organizations that we get to work with, all of us here on this panel, they have that individual at the center of everything that they do. And then they're making sure that their technology ties together in a way that creates a really great experience for them. And I think they acknowledge the different jobs, the different technology gets to perform, and they foster alliances and integrations across those technologies. I think that is where, investment really pays off, is when things aren't partitioned. We're integrating, we're working closely together, all to the betterment of those individuals. And then lastly, they're providing guidance, but not forcing compliance in everything. So they enable that individual to take ownership of their career development, but they're also holding their hand along the way in a very helpful manner. So they give good guidance so that the individual knows, hey, as I am growing, I get to further business outcomes because the business is giving me the outline of what it looks like. That's, those 3 things are the commonalities that I get to see with the individuals that we support with Degreed.
Awesome. So information, integration, guidance, all together. What are some other things that leaders really need to be doing to pull all together, learning and performance and career mobility?
I think Kat touched on it in some ways as well as Lou, so forgive me if I'm stating some of the obvious here, but I think another key stakeholders are community and customers. And they're kind of the same people, but sometimes there's a Venn diagram, if you will. But I think especially right now, all the company, certainly Verizon is one of those, it's very cognizant, but I see Amazon, I see a lot of companies, they're very, very thoughtful about people who are starting at an entry level or needing retraining, and whether that means that the opportunities still reside within the company or external someplace else. These employers want to help people use their agency, get access to the right information and the right next opportunity, whether it's within their companies or not. But that's about being sensitive to your communities, what's happening with people, what are their needs, how can the employers best support those kinds of needs. And so at Udemy, we're seeing, with our 7,000 UFB customers, our employer customers, that they want to just provide access to the right information. Each person has a different trajectory, but I think that obviously these big companies and all employers need to be very sensitive to the customer and community stakeholders as well.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that. We do have a question because and it relates exactly to that. So, we've been talking about how CEOs, chief people officers, CLOs navigate this space within a company. What are the corporate entities within society that can help out? I mean, I think, and specifically around universities, university systems, K-12, what are the ways that we can link that together? And I think, Heather, you're the obvious person to turn to on this question. What's the role outside of corporations or outside of companies that can help us do this?
Yep. So what California decided to do was to make sure that the community college system could actually provide an online set of opportunities and access to information for all of the underemployed Californians, which pre-COVID was about 10 million people. I think the number has increased significantly. And so there are public sector, solutions funded by our tax dollars that can also help and are on the front line helping people get access to new opportunities. And what I found is that the employer community of California is very, very committed to making sure that they realize that they've made tremendous job opportunities and created a tremendous amount of wealth because of the customers of California, and that they have a responsibility and obligation to reinvest in Californians. And that means providing easy ways for people to learn content. I've, for example, seen Salesforce provide through Trailhead a lot of great access to curricula, just like Amazon has, just like Google has, and provide it to the community college system, individuals who just want to get access to the right information and get a new job. And so these partnerships between our public sector organizations, our nonprofits who are trying to help support people, these nonprofits that help people learn that they can learn new skills and build confidence even if they didn't have success in traditional education is so important. Higher education has not historically and to date right now is not prepared to serve a lot of the needs of people right now who've got to learn something at an affordable price and get a new job quickly. They can't afford to invest in a degree. And I have to say, it was really sad. I met thousands of people throughout California who had student loan debt somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000, but making barely a living wage, no benefits, and couldn't even apply what they were learning, but can't ever buy a house, or just completely overwhelmed by debt. And things are even worse now, I hate to say it. So it takes all of us working together to solve people's problems and to build people's confidence that they can do new things and they can be successful in this new economy.
That's super helpful. Thank you. Now, you mentioned you started talking about specific offerings and how you come up with what the right offerings are. We have a question from someone who says, you mentioned consideration for and alignment with employee and learner interests and goals. Can you expand on what this might mean for your offerings? Very specifically, what does it mean for training for a specific role or position vis-a-vis standalone certifications? When you think about let's go past just the all the systems that connect everything together, and let's get down to what the content is. Maybe Anita, I think Pluralsight is first and foremost a content organization around technology training. Maybe you can talk about how you come up with what the right content is.
Our content is generated by technology experts that are actually a part of generating the leading edge technologies that are out there. And so they generate the content for us, and then we build a skill score. So if you want to learn how to code in Java, you can go on and get a score, recognize whether you're a novice or proficient. And from there, we make recommendations on other courses that you can take to grow your proficiency in that technology. So Lou at Verizon, does this really well. You're mapping and aligning to, especially what Brent said at Mighty, about what are the individual's passions. How do you align that to organizational outcomes based on them going in, seeing what technologies they're passionate about, or seeing what new job they want to get? I mean, we have people that started as office coordinators and they are now technologists, to going to Heather's point, right? They're able to grow their ability to earn income by becoming a developer, earning a really sustainable wage in an environment where, to the broader macro conversation we've had here, we are all technology companies and we have to close the skills gap. And it's on the shoulders, no pressure team here to raise the waterline for all the companies that we serve like Lou's so that we are making people better around the world. You know, whether it's the Malala Fund or the Norwegian Refugee Council, we have a global issue that needs technology skills and the skills gap to close to better the systems that are happening for refugees and underserved and underprivileged around the world. And so if you can identify what those skills are, take courses to close the gap, it's going to help in both for-profit and nonprofit sectors.
That's great. Thank you. We have another question that I think launching off of your comments, it essentially says, you know, when we think about skill gaps, we often talk in terms of technology skill gaps, and those are the easiest to sort of quantify and understand. What about, I mean, we're not going to take 800,000 long haul truckers and as we automate trucking routes, turn every single person into a coder. You know, what are the other things, you know, how do you quantify the other types of opportunities for people and determine what the right offerings is for them?
I think across those 8,000 individuals, you have 8,000 individuals, and knowing what their strengths are, knowing how to empower them inside of those strengths and build the skills outside. It could be across anything, including technology to soft skills, if we want to call them that, right? There's once we understand the individual, we have an understanding of the supply of skills. We can build skills where necessary and then apply them to the work. I think where we need to get rid of some of our historical baggage is we used to have to put blanket statements across populations and train everyone in a very standardized way. That's not the case anymore because of technology. We can personalize learning experiences. We can guide that individual into the path that is best for that individual and where they can be applied and really empower organizations through it. And so I think it's just, again, I say it over and over again, but as we know that individual, we can create very meaningful experiences for them to empower them in the entirety of their career.
Awesome. What other comments do we have? I mean, I think what you're talking about is this matching problem. You need to know the individual, you need to know the content, and you have to have some sort of mechanism for matching those. What, how have you guys tackled the matching problem in between individual and program?
I'll let Lou talk to it.
I would comment that's a journey that we've just started, where we're really trying to identify skills required for different roles. And then we are using Degreed as an example to help people get a sense of where are my skills, how close are they to where I want to go. And then that really empowers the individual around what's the amount of effort that I want to pour toward this, because you could find that there's a big gap between the job that you want and where you are today. But it doesn't mean it's impossible to get there. It's, what options you have, how quickly can you, how much do you want to invest? What's your plan in terms of timeline to get to a place? So, the opportunity is really put in the hands of the individual employee if we can lay it out in a clear way. And that's where Degreed has really helped us begin to do that. And then it also can allow leaders and employees to have realistic conversations. Are the gaps too far? Might there be some other opportunities that would be a great next step that could be achievable in a shorter horizon and allow you to get success there, and then determine if you want to go the next step. So I just think the technology is really helping us, people really map out a plan.
Awesome.
For long-term career growth.
Now we've got a question. Actually, I think this is from someone who is less concerned about where to go and more concerned about where not to go. I think this person is worried about, like, hey, what do I have to worry about in this evolution? And so maybe you could talk about what maybe we could just everyone weigh in on this. What are the sort of 2 to 3 most dangerous pitfalls that we face as we're trying to make this transition to create a more cohesive, a more individualized set of opportunities for people that weave together learning and performance and career mobility? Where do we not want to go?
Don't try to be perfect at the gate. Acknowledge that if you try to account for all of the things and be perfect and like not make any mistakes, you're just gonna get caught in this world that drowns you. So be open to trying and learning and failing and growing, because nobody knows the perfect answer. We all get to discover it together.
Awesome. What else?
I think as a company, if you're trying to do this, I recommend you start small to go big. You start slow to go fast.
Slow to go fast. Okay. Don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. Slow to go fast. What other what other adages can we use to point us in the right direction?
And then that small, trial, pilot, test and learn.
So don't try and go too big too early.
I would add something from the learner perspective. Don't try to be someone you're not, or fake interests you don't actually have, because life's too short and it's too hard to do. I would say bring your full self to the opportunities. Be really intellectually honest with yourself and others about what drives you, what motivates you. Do you live to work? Do you work to live? What do you really feel up to learning? And I think part of it is understanding yourself, being able to understand best how your skills and aptitudes best match with the opportunities that are available. But I think that and so it's helpful for people to give you some information, but I would say a big pitfall is for people trying to do something that really isn't a genuine fit with what they really want to do.
Awesome. Okay. Brent, we're going to give you 10 seconds, and then Anita, you got 10 seconds after that.
I guess my mind goes to modalities. Like, I think leaning too heavily on one modality, like just having an LMS where people watch video, like I think people learn in so many different ways. So whether it's reading, watching something, practicing a new way or new language of coding on Pluralsight, or really deeply understanding what somebody is learning day to day as they do their actual work. I think you have to just combine modalities and make that optionality available and powerful.
Awesome. Anita, bring us home.
What you don't like is just as important as what you love. So if you do something and you don't like it, that's good. That's knowledge. That's growth. Like, harness it and know it. And then use that to go find something else that you do like. And just to the learners, just be aware of that. There's no wrong. It's all learning.
That is a wonderful place to end. So I want to thank my panelists. This has been a delightful conversation. What amazing intelligence and insight and wisdom. Thank you guys very much. That was wonderful.
Thank you all. It's fun.